I do agree therapy is a privilege because it's expensive and it's a privilege to be able to just go during the day, right? When you have a 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm. I think, to be fair, I think my quote in episode 2 was like, "This is for white people."
Yeah.
Is what I said.
Welcome to This Filipino American Life, a podcast that explores the nuanced experiences of Filipino.
Ah, damn it.
Fuck. Amber alert. Okay. I'll take a break.
Take a beat.
Well,
Go.
welcome to This Filipino American Life, a podcast that explores the nuanced experiences of Filipinos in the United States. At Iba Pa, my name is Elaine Dallas, and I'm joined by my fellow hosts,
Ryan Carpio,
Joe Bernardo.
and
My
Mike, producer Mike. Air horns instead of Amber alerts, because that's the life we're living in, guys. How are y'all doing?
alerted by Amber.
Alerted by Amber?
for context, we just got an alert right now about the curfew. Recording
in the
on
city of Los Angeles.
the end of
recording
May.
on
Yeah.
end of May.
And it keeps
So-
changing.
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by the TFAL Ben C. Ben C? Ben Sai.
Ben C.
Ben
Si
C?
Ben.
Si Ben?
Ben.
Sino? Si Ben.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Ben.
for being a TFAL and supporting this episode, which, what are we talking about, guys? Ryan, Joe,
Mental health?
Mike. Mental health 2.0.
Faster and Furious? sir?
Faster and
Yeah, didn't
Furious,
we do
sir?
this before? Like, I feel like this weird feeling of deja vu.
This is the COVID edition.
Edition.
Yeah.
Correct. So for those who are new to the podcast, episode 2 of This Filipino American Life of TFL was about mental health and therapy. It is now 4 years? 4
Yeah,
years later?
4 years.
Yeah,
4 years later,
God.
give or take.
give or take. And we live in different times. You know, when we recorded that first episode, we had a different president. Things were on the horizon. New things were on the horizon, and we had hope. And now it's 2020, and we're stuck in our houses, and we have experienced civil unrest and protests in our city, which is causing for curfews and lockdowns beyond quarantine. And so we figured mental health would be a good topic to talk about, right?
Yes.
So how is your mental health doing, guys?
I feel so quarantined and isolated and socially distant from all of you. So,
I know. I just want to like reach through the screen and like touch you.
Mike
Sometimes
got
No
uncomfortable.
touching.
touch.
I mean, it's just so crazy. Like, sorry to use that word, but like, it's just so. You have, you know, we're in the middle of COVID, and then I don't know. You know what hasn't changed? Fucking people being killed when they shouldn't be. You know,
Yeah.
like shit. Everything's changing in the way we do things, and you know, and black men keep getting killed, and there's uprising now
Yeah.
in the streets, and there's COVID, and our president's horrible, and I'm sad and lonely, and I'm angry, and
Yeah.
it's all just so fucked up, you know. And
Mhm.
I think there was a statistic, or maybe it's made up, I don't know, but you know, it seems like, you know, crime's going down, but I think it's out there, like crime's going down, but black men keep getting killed still.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, what the fuck? So when you ask me, Elaine, I don't know. I feel tired, but also I'm glad that you guys are here and that we're talking to each other, you know, and that we're kind of supporting each other through all this. Especially, you know, it's summer now and things are starting to lighten up a little bit, but I don't know. I'm still scared, man. I'm still scared of the heebie-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Heebie-jeebies. Heebie-jeebies. So, anyway, But I'll feel better because, you know, I get to hang out with you guys for a bit. How are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Sorry, I kind of went
Joe?
off. Joe?
No, feel free.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like, you know, when we first started, I think a major thing that I needed to do was keep up like physical health.
Mm-hmm.
You know, keep on exercising, keep on walking around the neighborhood, stuff like that. And you know, taking care of all my loved ones.
Yeah.
You know, it's an important thing. So that's kind of helped a lot with like kind of mental health and all this isolation and stuff like that. But I think, and I don't know, I haven't seen any articles about this, but like because of the increased isolation in our society, I have been, I guess, relying more on social media to kind of stay connected.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually like increasing anxiety.
It's
dude.
right. Like, is it bad or good? Right?
It's bad. Like, like I get like, you know, it's important to like stay informed with all what's going on. And
Yeah. But the balance is like where's the line? And I don't know where it is.
Yeah.
I totally get what you mean. I
feel like Facebook is a big like wailing wall where everybody like kind of just like it's everybody complains.
It grinds you down.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then Twitter is like just a bunch of soapboxes. Everybody has to get on their soapbox. You know, IG's whatever. I'm not into TikTok.
Yeah.
There's a TikTok's a distraction.
TikTok's like
I think
Ryan's
with
dancing
all
right now.
oh, that's right.
But
with
like
all
yeah, because I have been, you know, just relying so much on social media that like I think all this, I don't want to call it fakeness, but like all of this like you know, presenting your best self, whatever that is, totally kind of just wears on me.
Yeah.
And it's just not real to me. And you know, I know it's very important to like read all the articles as much as possible and get informed of what's going on, but like it's hard to kind of stay to avoid all the really bad disruptive kind of stuff that appears on your feed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. The balance is hard to find. And I try to distract myself with watching Netflix or movies and whatnot. But like, I'm also like, I'm writing a lot more. And like a lot of the stuff I'm writing is just like a brain diarrhea dump of all my anger and feelings and emotions. It's just like, everything is like, what the fuck is happening? Like the CNN journalist who got arrested on live national TV. That shit was crazy. And then like all the civil unrest that's happening in the city of Los Angeles, like the past 2 days, it was sirens nonstop, helicopters nonstop. And like legit, I think I was having a nervous breakdown yesterday. And it was not like, to live in that environment all day is just, it's infuriating. But you know, I'm trying to take care of myself as best I can. I play Animal Crossing and get lost in the world of adorable little animals where I fish and do crafts for them. And CBD edibles and vape pens are a great resource to calming my anxiety because I don't have a Xanax prescription or anything like that. But like, right now, that's what's getting me by because everything is a dumpster fire. Popcorn to Mike, how are you feeling?
I don't know. I mean, like I'm trying to not get. I mean, that's a lie. I'm super overwhelmed, right? Because I mean, I think between trying to balance, you know, being informed, but also like trying to not let it get kind of the best of me, and trying to find distractions, but feeling like maybe like that's, you know, futile, and maybe, you know, part of the point is that we do need to be paying attention and being engaged. I mean, part of it is like, you know, there's a social media aspect, and everyone is, you know, as I think you were saying, Joe, or, you know, like everyone trying to be like kind of the best versions of themselves and trying to be woke and active and all those other things. And I'm also very weary of like people who are, you know, I feel like the word performative has come up a lot. Like, you know, who are kind of like demonstrating like their wokeness and activism by reposting things, which I don't do that often, honestly. Because I mean, I prefer to think that like true action is like action and not like just posting things to like an echo chamber of people that you all know probably agree with you.
Mhm.
You know, it's like it doesn't really like advance anything other than to prove like your wokeness or whatever, I guess. I mean, this is a problem I've had like before all this, but then I think it's harder now because like now we're stuck inside, and there's a part of me that's like, you know, I feel like, you know, me and or Elaine would probably be at some of these actions, and would be more engaged with some of these things, and like, you know, it's another thing to try to deal with like these things as they happen when we're in quarantine, and kind of like the wreckage that does on like your ability to kind of understand, process, and engage with that. And so I think like whatever mental health barriers we were dealing with before even all of this started happening, I mean, now it's just like, you know, it's definitely not helping, maybe exacerbating it. But, you know, I think, again, you know, the thing at least I've been doing to try to cope is like check in on like friends and other people, and see how they're doing and how we can support them. And, you know, I mean, it was like that before, you know, this week, and it's still like that now. And I don't know, COVID plus, you know, all kinds of things happening, like just makes it hard to like, and just being home makes it hard to like kind of create those spaces in which I think when we were able to like be other places, we were able to kind of compartmentalize or, you know, put some boundaries around it. Now it's all just blurring together. So it's been interesting.
Do you guys feel like you're forced into things that, like, forced into doing things that you won't normally do?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm having a lot of conversations with folks that I wish I didn't have to have.
Oh.
And by folks, I mean like my parents.
Oh man.
So
I mean, yeah, like that too.
interesting.
Like I almost never talk to my parents, like maybe like once a month at most. Like I see them maybe like as often.
Mm-hmm.
And now like we have like our Sunday check-ins, and like we have these conversations in which it goes down certain paths I don't like because they like tend to fall down some of these like stereotypical like attitudes around certain political things. And so, you know, just trying to deal with that in a very like remote video kind of way, and all this is like it's definitely wearing me down. So
one other quick question: what do you guys do to relax? Is there, you know, aside from sleeping,
Animal Crossing.
Animal Crossing, the game? I don't know anything about it, but I only see your posts.
Yeah, it's a life simulation game with animals.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty much like video games and CBD edibles. And
okay.
I mean, I'll be real. Like in a glass of wine, maybe. Like I don't drink as much, so like the CBD is what gets me through.
Yeah, I don't drink as much as I used to either, which is weird. But anyways.
I've actually been drinking more.
Have you? I have friends that have been drinking more. Yeah.
Also, yoga. I watch yoga videos. Mike has heard them.
Yoga. Yeah. I hate yoga. Especially with strawberries.
Thank you for that Spaceballs reference. My cousins will appreciate it. But yeah, I do a lot of yoga. If there's a studio called Yoga Salt in Culver City that puts their stuff on YouTube and has they have dramatic music for the intro, and Mike always hears that. He's like, "What are you doing? Is that yoga or something else?" I'm like, "Yes." Yeah, yoga, be active, trying to work out. Like that's trying, and a lot of cooking at home.
That's cool.
Yeah, I've been trying to I do yoga, and I also walk and try to do exercise. You know, normally I would say like sports is my outlet, but there's no sports.
I mean, there was no sports, but there was this really great documentary series.
Yeah, you should watch it, Joe.
Joe.
We are not going there.
So in a future episode, when we talk about The Last Dance.
It's good therapy. It's good therapy. Get you from your stresses of like not getting to watch basketball.
Yeah.
You know, watch some great things.
I flagged that on my feed. Like wherever I saw it.
As do not show.
I was like, yeah, this is inappropriate content.
Propaganda? Is that what you're saying? It's propaganda? To all our fans out of Chicago, Joe does not represent all of us. We appreciate the Last Dance documentary. At least I do, because it was enjoyable.
So who are we talking to today?
So we're talking to Alyssa Lia Mancao. She is a therapist based out of the San Fernando Valley. Her practices at least. And we are going to talk about mental health in a time of COVID and this terrible, awful news cycle that we're living in. So it's going to be a great and lighthearted episode.
So uplifting.
And so uplifting.
Super preppy.
But enjoy the rest of this episode. If folks have any thoughts and whatnot, hit us up via email or call our voicemail. Ryan?
That's 805-394 TFAL.
Whoa.
Yeah!
I'm
805-394
I'm so proud of you.
So proud of you, Ryan.
Oh my God.
4
That's
years.
amazing.
It took me.
Mike,
That's
what is it?
amazing.
1-800-45-closet.
Oh my God. I thought you were going to say cars for kids.
100 cars for kids? Yeah.
Ocho.
I feel like we've done this joke a bunch of times now.
Yes, we have.
Even my ocho.
But yes, take a listen and yeah.
Do you know how people can support us if they don't have any money but want to give us some shout outs?
How?
I wonder how.
Well, they can log on to iTunes and give us 5 stars. That's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-star reviews on iTunes.
Wow. It's like Yelp, but for podcasts.
It totally is like Yelp, but for podcasts. You could probably Yelp us too if you wanted. But on iTunes, if you give us 5 stars, we're more visible to people. We're more searchable, and we'll actually be one of the more top shows out there on if you search Filipino American on iTunes.
Oh, nice. I'm going to go and rate us 5 stars right now.
You haven't done it?
Oh, wait. I did it. I did it 2016.
Did you do one, Mike?
I don't have Apple devices or an iTunes account.
Or you could be like Tony Gertz, who wrote, "Love you guys. Thanks for all the great conversations and education around these experiences and stories. Heart emoji."
Is his brother Yo?
Yogurts. High five.
So take some time if you listen to us, if you like us. Go on iTunes, put a quick review, put 5 stars for This Filipino American Life. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we're back. Hello, everybody.
Glad to be back.
Hello.
Yes. I hope you enjoyed that ad, whatever we played. Join TFAL or Patreon or buy us a cup of coffee or buy a t-shirt from our What a Maneuver store. All of the things that we sell to support our podcast. We are here with our very special guest, Alyssa Mancao.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Cue. Pam, 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 pam.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
I was ready.
It's okay.
I mean,
She forgot to cue it up.
I don't want Mike to make our ears deaf. So. Hello, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. Given the circumstances. Thank you for asking. And I'm really glad to be here with you guys. I'm really looking forward to this discussion.
Great. And so I found Alyssa's through Instagram. Just in my own personal following of folks. I'm one of those folks who is like on a continuous healing journey. So I follow several online like therapists, like holistic therapists, and I don't know them off the top of my head, like, but there's a lot of them, and I follow them all, and I like save them in my like little folder of like healing, so I can reference it. And I was super excited when I found out that you're Filipino American because there's not a lot. And this is a follow-up to one of our really, really early episodes. It was like episode 2. Yeah. Where it was like mental health and therapy. And this is a topic that folks have asked us numerous times to revisit. So I'm thankful that you are here. So thank you so much. And could you share about yourself, like your journey and how you got from baby Alyssa to adult Alyssa in this journey of being a therapist?
So my name is Alyssa. I also go by Lia Mancao. I am a licensed clinical therapist with a private practice in Sherman Oaks, California. I was born in the Philippines, and I came here when I was 4 years old. And I just remember being in elementary school and having a lot of compassion for human beings and being very much interested in just people who helped other people, like Gandhi and Martin Luther King. At the time when I was younger, I didn't know it was social activism and things like that, but I liked the concept of humanity and connecting humanity. So I did a lot of volunteer work and things like that. And so I decided to just from there get my bachelor's degree in social work, just to kind of see what it was. And it was through just getting my bachelor's degree in social work, I decided I wanted to be a social worker. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what that meant. I just knew that social workers helped people. So I went to get my master's degree in social work, still not really understanding what social work is and what that really meant. And it was through my internships in graduate school that I fell into the career of being a therapist. But before I started my private practice, I did a lot of I worked almost over 7 years in the justice system as a social worker, as a therapist in the justice system. So that's the short version of how I got to be where I am.
So,
go ahead, Joe.
What about where did you grow up and stuff like that, and like where are your parents from? More about background like that.
Okay, so I was born in Cebu. My mom is Ilocano, and my parents came here at separate times. So when we came to America, we lived in Chino Hills for a really long time. We lived in Chino Hills, and then it wasn't until like 2011 when I was about 20 years old that I moved out to the LA area just to be closer to where I was going to school. I was going to school at USC, but my parents stayed in Chino Hills.
Nice. Did you go to Ayala?
I did. Did you?
No.
Nope. No. Wow, Joe.
Where did you go?
I grew up in the Valley.
Oh, how do you?
No. I have friends who like everybody who I know who like is from Chino Hills and stuff. They went to Ayala.
Yeah.
So
I was like, how do you know that, Joe?
Yeah.
No, what's the name? The Chad and Chase Valencia.
Oh, yeah. They have the restaurant.
Lhasa. Yeah.
Lhasa. Yeah. They're I grew up with them.
Yeah. And they went to Ayala.
Yeah.
And I have other people.
That's so funny.
Yeah,
Joe went to the Valley School.
Yeah. The world is always so small.
My first job right out of graduate school was in Van Nuys, and everyone's like, "What's that? Where is that?" I was like, "I don't know.
I still don't know where it is.
I don't know.
I know.
Like, I'm from Chino Hills."
Where in Van Nuys was it?
It's off of Lenox and Sherman Way. I don't know if those streets are parallel. But there was like a animal shelter and a Boston Market.
Yes. Oh, I totally know exactly where that is.
A YMCA. Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up around there. So that's why I know that. Oh, yeah. So you said you worked in the justice system. What does that mean to the layperson?
So the justice system it's a large bureaucratic system, and a lot of things constitute as the justice system, like the courthouses, prisons, things like that. I worked at a level 12 placement for juvenile youth that were criminal and sex offenders. So this was any youth that was I think my youngest client was probably 11, but so it was like 11 to 18 for people who have committed crimes. They've served their time in juvenile hall, but they're not yet ready to go back into the community. So it's like a 6-month program where they live there. They live there.
How was that? How was that?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. Yeah. I loved it. It's people hear, people hear sex offenders and they hear, juvenile offenders, but they're still kids. They're still kids. They're products of their environment. They have stories to tell, and their stories are very, very beautiful. So I think it was just a good. I would. Part of the reason I started my private practice is so that I could do that work pro bono, because there's a lot of red tape when you're working for an agency. So, yeah, it was good. It was good. Thank you for asking.
What did you love about it? It sounded like you like the storytelling aspect of it from the clients.
That's one part of it. It's the storytelling aspect, and it's being able to invoke change in the systems that really need it and the communities that really need it. It's being able to hold space and be an ear for disenfranchised and disadvantaged populations. It's being able to help people understand that there's nothing wrong with them and they are born whole. When a lot of the children in those places, they're Black and brown youth, right? and they come from very disadvantaged communities with not a lot of resources and help. So when you come from those communities, it's almost internalized this belief that you're not good enough or you're not worthy. So it's being able to challenge those beliefs and then helping people see their worth. Because you're not just getting that from the community, you're getting that from like your teachers, police officers, just everywhere. So it's just really rewarding work.
So part of your like expertise and kind of what you practice in your work is EMDR and inner child healing. Can you explain what those are?
Yes. So EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and it is a therapeutic approach and intervention. It's non-talk therapy. So you're not talking really at all during EMDR, and it's to treat people who have PTSD or trauma symptoms. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit, okay? When a person experiences a traumatic event, and it doesn't have to be something where you feel like your life is going to die. If it was traumatic for that person, it's something that can be treated in the EMDR. So it can be like a divorce or your pet dying, or it can be something from like war or a car accident or witnessing domestic violence growing up, right? It can be any of those things. When a person experiences a traumatic event, that event gets recorded on different levels. It gets recorded in the mind, so that's memories, flashbacks, thoughts, and it gets recorded in the body. So tension, headaches, gut issues, it's all of that stuff, right? So a person can have trauma and talk about it all the time in therapy, right? This is what happened in my childhood. This is what I saw. Yet they still find themselves probably engaging in the same type of dysfunctional and destructive relationships. They still find themselves having anger problems, regardless of how much awareness they've gained in therapy. Things aren't changing on a behavioral level. So it's like, I know all these things, but I still do this thing. I still get angry. And that's because talk therapy can only go so far in terms of invoking change. We have to work with the body and all of the stress and pain that the body has held from the traumatic experience. So what EMDR does is it uses your eye movements to go back and forth to help the body recall what happened during the trauma. And so it's to release the memories that the body has repressed from the traumatic experience. Right? So it sounds like kind of weird until you do it, but that is, what EMDR is.
Is it kind of like hypnosis or not at all like hypnosis?
That's a really good question. It is not at all like hypnosis.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not fully familiar with hypnosis, but it's not at all like hypnosis.
Okay.
But go ahead.
Sorry. So is it because like the body reacts to certain events, and because like if something triggers the memory, the body will automatically react to that memory? Is that kind of like the logic behind it? Part of it?
That absolutely is part of it. And when a traumatic event happens, it gets stored. It gets stored in our memories, long-term memory and short-term memory. And then things that aren't consciously stored, they're repressed and they're suppressed. So EMDR helps us access those memories as well. So like, I'll give an example. If I have a client that endured abuse as a child, and we're doing EMDR right now as they're an adult, things that their body might recall during an EMDR therapy session, or it's like probably, let's say, the temperature of the room when they were being abused, they might feel it in the here and now. So let's say my office, it's a warm day in my office. Let's say during the times that they were getting abused, maybe they lived in a colder area, they might start to feel cold in the session because the body has recorded everything that was happening at that time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
How many sessions does it take for like a release for that, for a certain set of trauma? Like I'm imagining it's not like one and done. Like
no, I've never seen that happen. I'm not sure if it's like a 1 10-hour session maybe, but it really does depend on what they're coming in for and how complex the trauma is. So I've done EMDR with somebody who had a fear of flying on a plane, and then that was about like 3 to 4 sessions. So that one was pretty cut and dry, but with complex trauma, it takes a few months.
So you could detect kind of what the physical reactions of the trauma is. How do you exactly treat it?
With EMDR?
Yeah.
So the rationale behind EMDR is when a person experiences trauma, the memories and everything, it's suppressed.
Yeah.
And what we know about mental health is suppressing and avoiding is not good, right? So when you're doing EMDR and as memories start to come up, so in between each EMDR phase, we pause and I ask them what came up for you. They tell me what came up. They describe it to me as
Okay.
accurately as possible.
Got it.
Like,
Got it.
yeah, and that's how we treat it, just kind of like through that moment where they tell me.
Oh,
Okay.
So like if you're if it's like a childhood trauma and you've suppressed it for so long as an adult, in a session, you're taken back to that moment in time.
Yep. And then your
and then
you're calling it. Mm-hmm.
And then as an adult, you process it with you. Yeah. And then through the processing, that is the pathway to healing whatever the trauma was.
Yeah. So it's called a dual awareness, or that's what I call it. It's a dual awareness. So they're going back in time psychologically to when this thing happened. They're remembering everything with me. So they're experiencing it as it was happening. And at the same time, I'm reminding them that they're in my office and they're safe. So we're integrating the past and the present.
Are you sort of hooked up to anything, or it's just like on a couch and like thinking or concentrating?
Ooh, that's a good question. So there, an EMDR therapist, like if I was with you guys, I would have you look at my finger and I would just, trace my fingers back and forth, and then you would follow my finger, and then that would kind of invoke the memories. Let me see if I could pull it up, how close it is. These are actually, well, I don't do that though, because it just hurts my shoulder if you do it for a long time. I'll have clients use this.
So she's holding up what are you holding up?
These are called
like a machine.
Machine. Yeah, seriously, it kind of is. I can't think of the exact term for it, but I call them, they're called, I guess, tactile tappers. So a client holds one in each hand, and then it buzzes alternatively, and then that stimulates the left and right brain movement. And then I turn it on, and then, clients will feel the buzzing, and it's the left and right brain hemispheres. They start going off, and that'll help bring up memories from the past.
Okay, so to describe it to the people who are listening to us on audio, it's basically a buzzer on each hand that's connected to some kind of device, and then and then the buzzers will buzz. Yeah.
The buzzers will buzz. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is relatively new. Would you say, is it a relatively new approach to therapy as opposed to like talk, or of course, and all that?
Yeah. Talk it is relatively new. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Francine Shapiro, I think, came up with it a few decades ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, you talked about EMDR. What about inner child healing work?
So inner child healing refers to each of us as adults. We all have childlike aspects of ourselves, and this is the part of us that holds information and memories from our childhood, whether they were positive or negative. And we each have a childlike aspect to ourselves that responds to triggers in our environment. So inner child work is really, it's the understanding that everything that we've been through from birth until now has had an effect on us. Both subconsciously and consciously. It impacts the way that we relate to people. It impacts the way we relate to our partners and how we respond in arguments. And so what inner child work is, it is helping resolve earlier childhood wounds so to be able to heal what's happening now. So oftentimes, clients, like let's say a client comes to me and they're having problems in their relationship, right? Mm-hmm. Oftentimes that's representative of something connected to their attachment in childhood. It doesn't have to be their parents. It can be whoever took care of them, or a sibling or whatever. So what I found doing inner child work is if we can kind of go back and identify what that earlier wound was, then we can, in present day, understand what's happening now. So
I kind of have maybe this is dumb. I've never done like therapy or anything like that before, but more on the philosophical level of what is its goal? What is the goal of like talk therapy or EMDR style therapy? What is the object of going to therapy? As someone who has never been, if someone's thinking about it, what is the actual goal of it? Is it just to get everything out, or is it to change behavior? What is the goal? Or it's not really like that?
I'm really glad that you're asking, because I think therapy, has a bad rap. I think people believe that something has to be actively wrong in their lives for them to go to therapy. And there's also a stigma attached to it, right? So it's like, if something is wrong, you should just handle it yourself or pray or whatever. So the goal of therapy is really just depends on each person. I've had people come into therapy and they're feeling depressed and they don't want to feel that way anymore. So you come to therapy. I've had couples come to therapy because they're not able to resolve their issues, just them two. So they come and then I help them learn how to understand each other, working from a childhood perspective. And then other people, it's kind of like my life is fine, things are good, but I want to learn more about myself. Mm-hmm. And for me, the way I describe therapy is it's like holding up a mirror to your subconscious mind. So there are things where we're existing in this world and they're happening in our subconscious mind. We're largely unaware of things. As human beings, unless we're really doing the work, we're largely unaware of how our childhood, and I've had people I've had a great childhood, and that's probably true, but things still affect you, right? Right. And even the littlest things affect you. So it's like, here are all these things that are happening subconsciously. You can't see it because it's behind you. And so what therapy does is it holds up a mirror to that blind spot and helps you connect those dots. So oftentimes people just come to therapy for self-improvement and self-awareness.
And that's actually really where I wanted to kind of go. And I'm glad you explained it that way in terms of like self-improvement and self-awareness, because you're right. I think a lot of times we think that, at least even for me, I thought of therapy as, I think in our episode 2, I said, oh, this is for rich people, or this is for people who have the time to do it. I don't have time to do that. Or
it is a privilege.
And also, the idea that I can take care of it myself, or there's nothing wrong with me. But the fact that there are folks who are continuing to find self-improvement, and not just like a therapy for things that are happening all the way in the past, but currently, like now, what we're experiencing through all the stuff that's been going around us. More and more, I'm thinking, man, I need to talk to more friends, or I need to talk to somebody, a professional, just all these experiences that we are currently having at this time, being cooped up, COVID, a lot of the things that we're seeing right now in the media, a lot of the injustices that are happening, sometimes it's like, how do I even begin talking about this? So I'm glad thank you for sharing it that way, because I think all of us are always looking for self-improvement, or even just like trying to figure out who can I talk to about this stuff, So I appreciate you answering that way.
Of course. And then I like to ask people this, just to reflect, right, when they think like, oh, I don't need therapy, or I like to ask people this: how were emotions dealt growing up? Like, how did your parents handle emotions growing up? How did they talk about feelings growing up? How was mental health addressed growing up? Right. And that'll kind of be the guide for us to understand too what our relationship is with therapy. But I do agree, therapy is a privilege because it's expensive, and it's a privilege to be able to just go during the day, right? When you have a 9 to 5.
I think, to be fair, I think my quote in episode 2 was like, "This is for white people."
Yeah. I get it.
But Filipinos, we got friends, we got church, we got all this, but
well,
I do appreciate it.
Speaking of that, I know, a lot of Filipinos, I guess, deal with, trauma or kind of what issues they have, through multiple means, right? If it's not therapy, a lot of people kind of, use church as a way to kind of deal with any kind of problems that they have, praying, spirituality. Those are important, especially like, I know in particular provinces and stuff, or kind of more removed from kind of the urban Western lifestyle in the Philippines, the idea of spirits is still very prevalent, and that people might say that that person has a spell on me, and that's why I'm feeling this kind of trauma, right? So I guess, how do you, communicate or work with those folks who who depend on other alternative ways to kind of dealing with some of their traumas?
For me, I believe everybody's doing the best they can, and I believe in those approaches, right? That spiritual work, I do. Yeah, I really do. Like, I think how I work with them is I ask them to teach me about it, help me understand it. And then I help them understand therapy too. I don't think it's black and white. I don't think it's like this or this. I think it's all of it.
Yeah.
I think it's all of it. And I think the two can coexist. I do.
I actually think about it in terms of communication. Like a lot of times where it's hard to articulate things, and I say that now because it's hard for me to articulate how I've been feeling, or how things are affecting me in some way. And sometimes communication happens in a variety of ways. Sometimes it happens through sign language or video chat, or whatever the most effective way for us to communicate. And there are some folks who don't believe church works, or and I bring it up because I was in conversation with someone recently, and one of the questions was asked of like what our experiences with church was, and she told me, all I learned in church was you're supposed to be quiet. And I was like, oh man, that's so deep. But look, also like that's true. You're sort of learn to like stand up, sit down, listen, and be quiet, and kind of have this like stillness. When you're a kid, you're sort of like discouraged from not just goofing around, but like expression should only be in these recited kind of prayers, right? And then
are you Catholic?
Catholic church, yeah. Sorry, in Catholic church.
That sounds very Catholic, yeah.
It's very, very Catholic, and it's because we were actually talking about the effects of religion and in terms of like upbringing and all that stuff. But in a lot of ways, that's not communicative to younger people. That's not a very good way to communicate to them or get through to them, is by telling them to be quiet, especially for kids who have a lot of energy. And I imagine that communication with the work that you do with youth is vastly different from how you communicate with adults in a relationship. So I find this topic very fascinating. I'm also like just trying to figure things out myself in terms of how we as a community can help each other heal, how we as Filipino Americans can support each other through this, how friends, I look at TFAL, my pals here at TFAL as my therapy, because like I look forward to like just
a lot of pressure.
I just gotta get thanks. I know, Mike, I need you.
I charge by the hour.
You should, Mike. You should. I want the air horns. So, but this is I think this is a good redo or another topic on this. I know we've been talking about this for a while with Elaine. I mean, early on, it was like our second episode or our third episode. So,
and that was like in a pre-COVID era,
right?
And now we are living through this. What has it been like as a therapist treating clients in an era of quarantine and COVID? Like, I'm imagining everything is just so heightened because of what we are all experiencing.
Yeah, it's true. It's an interesting time to be a therapist right now. First of all, I think all of us have transferred our practices online. So it's quite exhausting to be staring at a computer screen for like 5 to 8 hours a day. So like Zoom fatigue is very real. It's also hard to be a therapist treating online because most of us use information from our clients sitting in front of us, from the way they sit, from the way they shift, and you don't get to see that anymore. You don't get to see that anymore in a video. You just see their face. And it's hard because as you're treating clients with what they're experiencing during quarantine, you as a therapist are also going through the exact same thing and this has never happened before in the history of therapy, right? So it's like whatever they're saying they're going through, it's like we are at the same time. So it's interesting, and it's also interesting to see each person dealing with it, coping with it differently. But the main theme around all of this is like loneliness and helplessness. Yeah.
And I know, like in at least the city of LA, like different resources have been made available. Like I got something from the city that was like everybody was able to access Headspace, this app Headspace, which is like like a meditation type of app that if you're a LA County resident, you get free access to it because it was like a in-purchase type app situation. And so I find it fascinating that like the conversation about mental health has been there from the beginning, it feels like, when quarantine started. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate that the conversation has shifted to like these are the resources, take care of yourself, instead of like man up, buck up, we can get through this, blah blah blah. Like that seems like a very it seems like that's a shift.
Yeah.
In the American mindset. Viewing it from like a Filipino American lens, is there a shift? Because I don't know, like Ryan, Joe, Mike, like when you're interacting with your family members, do you see that type of mindset? Leah, Alyssa, you're as well, like in your own family, because we're all Filipino Americans, and like I know that I had like a come to Jesus conversation with my dad, like, because I am doing grocery runs for them. And in text conversations, he was like, I'm not helpless, I can go. And my dad is in his 70s. He is in the upper, like, he's in the, like, at risk. And I was like, Dad, like, I know you're not helpless, but I don't want you to go. Let me do this for you. This is like a terrible situation that we all find ourselves in. I want to help you the way you helped me my entire life. And so it's like, this is a conversation I don't think I would ever have with my dad. But because of this, because of the new shifting goals, like, we are faced with these conversations. And it's just like, I don't know, as a Filipino American, it feels very raw. And I don't know if it's necessarily raw because of COVID, raw because I'm Filipino, but it just feels like everything does feel very raw. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
At least for when I'm like thinking about it, I feel that at least with me and my parents, it's kind of like there's more of a codependency on each other, and that we kind of have to, like, I don't know, for me, like, I have to look out for my parents a lot more than before because of the situation. And I think there's also like a need to gravitate towards other people because we're so isolated. So I don't know if that's an American thing or Filipino American, or just a natural human thing. And I feel like, I don't know if my relationship has changed with my parents, but I think it's maybe like on a certain level, maybe we got closer because of it. Yeah.
Yeah, because you got to take care of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad loves to go shopping. Like, he likes to go Costco, and I used to always say, like, that's kind of his escape. My dad kind of takes care of my mom, right? So, you know, sometimes he's like, oh, I gotta go buy her stuff, and I know this part of it is just like to get out. And so, you know, now we're like, hey, Dad, dude, you don't have to go to Costco. And, you know, we can Instacart. We can get you groceries. He insists. And the reason I say that is because, you know, parents also have to express themselves, I think, in various ways. And I know it took a long time for my dad to admit, like, that was kind of his escape, to go shopping, grocery shopping. So we let him out once in a while. You know, go ahead, Dad. Wear a mask. be quick.
You know? It's funny that you say that, because my dad actually had called me and said, Elaine, don't be mad. And I was like, oh, what is happening? He's like, on my drive, I went to House of Grill and I got food. And it was kind of like, it was amazing, the shift in roles, because I remember as a child having that conversation with, like, my dad, don't get pissed, but dot dot dot, and then fill in the blank with whatever thing I did. But now it's like he's the one telling me because he knows I'm worried for him. So it's I
like role shifts. I like it. I like the idea of experiencing some of that anxiety that our parents experienced when we were I like it. I like scolding them once in a while. I like telling my parents, "Hey, don't do this." Goodness gracious, come home already. Jeez. So anyway,
Mike, what about you?
I mean, maybe like to kind of bring it back to kind of like the topic at hand. I mean, like the fact that we've been all brought to this point where we have to kind of confront things with our families in a way that we're not used to is forcing us to think about do we have the mental wherewithal, emotional wherewithal to kind of do that if we hadn't been able to before? It's requiring us to kind of stretch ourselves in ways that I think we were all unprepared for. And I'm wondering in the longer term too, is this like creating some sort of trauma that we're just not recognizing because we're kind of in a fight or flight kind of state. And just kind of like, when we talked about mental health, like way back in episode 2 or whatever it was like about kind of, there's some tones of like, a lot of things we just can't confront. And now we're forced to confront all of them all at the same time with our family, who's the hardest to confront things with. And with my family, it's just like really just kind of dealing with the fact that, we don't have a lot of conversations, but when it gets like into certain topics like political or otherwise, it feels more likely we're going to have those conversations that we avoided for so long because we're in a space in which we can't really communicate the way that we used to. And so like, I'm wondering on the short term, like, I can deal with this and, it's something that I have to do, to kind of keep us connected and communicating. But on the longer term, it's kind of like, it's hard to like fathom that all of us kind of jumping into this different headspace in any form is going to have, a particularly positive effect on our mental health. Because we haven't really thought about like kind of the tools by which to confront that with. Right. And I'm wondering and thinking like, what are some of those tools that we should be thinking about, when we do have to kind of confront kind of these breaks in like very close personal relationships and like in a very trauma kind of specific kind of era,
Yeah. It seems to be like in Filipino American history, like our lives have been documented by certain traumatic experiences, right? Like even in Philippine history, there's Spanish rule and then US colonialism and then Marcos era martial law and then the brain drain flight from the Philippines to America and then like us, like our generation being born here and then 9/11 I guess being another. I mean I like hop skipped like 20 years but like there's each era has like a traumatic experience that they've had to deal with, right? And like this pandemic is a trauma for all of us right at this moment. And compounded on that is that we're also at the time of this recording, it's at the time of this recording, the city of Los Angeles is under curfew, is under lockdown because not just for COVID, but because of civil disobedience and unrest that is happening in the city due to justice for Black lives like George Floyd, like Breonna Taylor, like so many other folks who have died. And it's like,
all over the nation too.
All over the nation, yeah. And it's like, how do Alyssa, how do we handle this? You're the therapist. Help us solve our problems.
Right.
Dang, Elaine.
It's such an easy question. I'm sorry.
That's an expensive question, Elaine.
Right. Let me solve these issues in the next 30 minutes.
Do I need to hold something in my head and activate the left and right side of my brain?
Okay, so that was a lot. So what was the question?
The question is how? Just how? My question is just like how? How do
I think what we're all getting at is like clearly we're all kind of confronting a lot of things in ways that we were, either not prepared for or just don't really know what the coping mechanisms or tools for that are. But I think, in your practice as it exists now, and as you confront that with, patients coming to you, I mean, what are some of the ways that you're trying to help people kind of better process and equip themselves to deal with that on the day-to-day? I mean, all these things are kind of asking us, a lot of us, kind of both emotionally and personally. And so, what are some of the things that have come up, and some of the things that you have recommended for folks, to help kind of hopefully kind of help them cope with these times a little bit better?
So one thing that acts against developing PTSD is being able to talk about what you're feeling in the moment as it's happening. In therapy, it's called name it to tame it. So name what you're feeling. I'm feeling helpless. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling unloved. You want to be able to actively be able to address what's going on in the here and now, because something that does contribute to the development of PTSD after a traumatic event has occurred is ignoring and avoiding and suppressing. So the opposite of that would be sharing and connecting and addressing. So if we can do those things right now, call up a friend, hey, I feel really lonely, or hey, this is really hard for me, right? Then we're kind of actively being able to kind of preemptively reduce the likelihood of experiencing some sort of I don't want to say PTSD, because I don't think collectively as a population, we're going to develop PTSD, right? Just because you've experienced a trauma doesn't mean you're going to develop PTSD. But just to reduce developing some sort of stress disorder, we have to talk about things now. I also recommend grounding. So Eileen, you were talking about Calm. There's another free app called Insight Timer, learning how to ground, learning how to meditate, journaling. You want to move your body. You want to eat well. You want to make sure you're hydrated. Human connection is also really critical too in learning how to cope with things. Like when we think about this pandemic and social distancing, it's been really hard on a lot of people's mental health. And here's why. As human beings, we are wired for human connection. We are wired for human connection. We're wired for relationships. Even people who are introverts need human connection once in a while. So if you even think back to just kindergarten, or when you're a little kid, when you get in trouble, you're put on timeout, right? You are physically being disconnected from people and being by yourself, right? And that does not feel good. Not being able to talk to anybody doesn't feel good. When we talk about the prison system, one way that you're punished, right, is you get put in the shoe. You're by yourself. You're isolated. Even prison itself, you're isolated, right? So isolation in and of itself has historically been a punishment because it doesn't feel good. And now we're all in this thing called self-isolation. And that doesn't feel good. It is not normal to not be around human beings. It's not normal. We're meant to be in proximity. So I don't know where I was going with this, but so the way we combat it is so then we connect emotionally. If we can't connect physically, we have to connect emotionally. Whatever that looks like for each person. It doesn't have to be Zoom calls. It can be texting. So that's how we can deal with those things in the here and now.
So a lot of Filipino Americans, they are, serving on the front lines, right?
They are more likely to develop PTSD than us sitting at home.
So yeah. So I mean, that's one sector of the population who has the privilege to stay at home, but there's another sector of the population who's going there and very much is facing a lot of risk, getting infected. A lot of their families getting infected. What are some kind of, I don't know, coping mechanisms or just ways to kind of get through that?
For the frontline workers, and I have, my heart really goes out to them. And I don't know if this is possible, but I do recommend that people take breaks. If their job gives them 15-minute breaks, they take it, they take all of it, disconnect, put your phone away and just sit outside for a little bit and just breathe and relax. Make sure you're taking your lunch breaks. I think that it's so important to set boundaries. So when you go home, people are going to be like, how was work? Tell me about it. How many cases were there? Let's talk about it, right? It's going to be really helpful to practice learning how to turn that off and to say, I don't want to talk about work right now. I'd like to do other things. And then making sure that there's a routine to engage in outside of work, because it is our frontline workers that are going to be at greater risk for developing, symptoms of PTSD than the regular people.
They're great tips. I'm writing stuff down. Sorry. I'm a note taker. It's I don't know when I will read these, but I'm writing it all down, my process.
If you're a frontline medical worker, I hope you have insurance. So I would recommend that they also see a therapist. just as it's happening, because it's also very cultural for us, right, to not go to therapy. It's very cultural for us to be like, it's so normal to be a nurse in our culture. Like, why would I want to see a therapist? Like, I do this all the time. I've been doing this for years. So in our culture, we are very good at minimizing mental health symptoms. And I do want to highlight, I'm sure you have a Filipino audience, because of the way that our society as Filipinos historically have viewed mental health, we are somatic people. So instead of getting sad, instead of feeling sad or depressed, we're going to have headaches. We're going to be stressed. We're going to have back tension. We're going to have stomach issues. We're going to have anger outbursts. So our symptoms are more physical as a culture, as a community. So
did you just describe me? Yes.
Right. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. So, you know, people are going to be like, this is normal. I do this all the time, but they're not seeing their symptoms because it's not overtly sadness or whatever. But anyway, hopefully you have insurance. See a therapist if you're on the front lines. Get support.
Quick like cultural question for you. Like, do you have clients that are Filipino American, and do you sort of see the like kind of the generally, right, like the differences in
presentation?
I know you've explained kind of like, is there? Yeah,
I do. Yeah, we are. Yeah, it's what I just said. Just it's because culturally we don't talk about mental health.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of just tend to deal with things on our own, or with the family, or if you're Catholic, pray, say the Hail Mary, do the rosary, go to the priest, what confession, you know, that stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So with my Filipino clients, I do see more physical symptoms like headaches, stomach aches.
And is there anybody else in your family that has the same kind of like background with you educationally, or are you one of many therapists in your family, or are you the only one that you know of? You know, I usually ask that. Like,
that's a good question. There's another therapist in the family. Yeah, she's younger than me.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she's my little cousin.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How does your family see you like as a therapist? Is that issue ever come up, like in terms of, is it that to them is like, oh, you have a good job, or is it like something that's more like, you know, like you're helping someone?
Or did they ask you, what do you do?
Yeah.
It's all of it. It's all of it. And sometimes they'll come to my office and they'll sit on my couch and they'll say, okay, Anak, tell me what you say to them. And they're just like, I'm like, oh. So I think it's like, they're very proud. They obviously believe in mental health because, you know, I talk to them about it and things like that. But yeah, I don't think they too are like, what is it? What do you do? Do you just talk to people? Yeah.
Has it changed sort of like their like being Filipino American? Has your elders have they changed their perception of what it is because now you're in kind of like the profession, or has it sort of remained kind of like oh, that's what Alyssa does, you know? Or have they been like, oh, okay, I get now the importance of it. So I guess, have you converted some folks to be more?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I have. So my parents, right? Like, let's say if we're feeling sad, I think historically it would be like, oh, don't feel sad. Or don't, you know, like not in a malicious way, but just like, oh, don't do that. Or, you know, think about all these other people kind of thing, right? So just having me and doing what I do, my parents now say it's, they do still say it's okay, but they also ask like, what do you need? How do you feel? Like they don't just try to shut it down, you know? They're very good at empathizing now.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
They're very good. My aunts and my titos and titas, I don't know about them, but my parents are good. My parents.
So I have a kind of a pivot question. So you talked about how therapy is very much a privilege, and usually those who can afford it, usually rich and white people, are have better access to it, right? But I also know that a lot of folks of color, people who are in the margins, who are marginalized historically, experience trauma, and a lot of them kind of deal with it through like social activism, or like they deal with it through trying to make the things right. So do you ever kind of deal with people who who have kind of dealt with their traumas through kind of activism at all?
Currently in my practice, I'm trying to think. I know that when I was working with the juvenile youth, um, some of them, some did turn into activism, whether it was like volunteering at their high schools or being able to volunteer at like local shelters and things like that. Another thing that helps with trauma is being able to create meaning. And for some people, that activism helps them with their meaning.
Mm-hmm.
It helps them, it's like it helps them with their purpose. But yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I have had clients that have coped in that way, and I think it's a great way to cope. I think it's a great way.
Got it.
In recent, like, I don't want to say like years, but in recent times, like it feels like there's been an uptick in activism, or at least in my circle, like the people that I have known have partaken in certain type of activism in their work, right? Like speaking for myself, it was always, mine would be like arts focused, right? Like I worked with film arts in the past, with visual communications, which are both Asian American, Filipino American arts organizations. Mike did Justice for Filipino American Veterans. Joe and Ryan, you've both worked in like the city and done other things, and Ryan's worked at the church. So like we've transitioned that to that, and it's been very focused on the things that we find ourselves like our pockets in terms of like what we know. For Filipinos who are trying to support, this is like a pivot to what's happening for Filipinos who are trying to support Black Lives Matter. How can we do that? What would be your suggestion in how we can do that in a way that centers the conversation around Black lives, and also do it in like true allyship, I would say.
There's so many ways to go about it. On a very physical, concrete way, if you have the space to join a rally, I recommend joining rallies. If you can bring water, first aid, sanitizers, just anything that they need, if you can provide that support that way, that's great. If you want to read books on racism and social justice, that's great too. What I'm hearing from a lot of just like all around, and I do agree with this, is we have to have these conversations with our family members, with our titos and our titas that still uphold racist beliefs, right? They might not think they do, but they do. Some of them, if not all of them, right? And so it's being able to like call out racism as we see it. When they say certain words that are not okay, we have to be able to educate them on why that's not okay. When we see them do things that are not okay, that are anti-Black, we have to be able to call it out. And, I'm creating this, I've had this content on my feed for a long time, I just haven't shared it, but it's about anti-Blackness in the Filipino community. And the way anti-Blackness shows up in the Filipino community, it's colorism. It's colorism, right? It's like the darker Filipinos, especially in the Philippines, they're like less accepted than the lighter Filipinos. The closer in proximity that you are to whiteness, the more attractive and beautiful you are. If you guys have been to the Philippines, you've seen aisles and aisles of whitening cream and things like that in our grocery stores. It's a whole aisle. And that is how anti-Blackness shows up in our communities. So, our allyship doesn't have to be performative. It doesn't have to be, I'm doing all these things, like, look, I'm helping. It can be the conversations that we have at the dinner table with our family members. Right. So,
I kind of want to chime in just real quick. I think in general, we just need to take the responsibility of just the learning aspect of things. Like we need to take the ownership of actually learning about other cultures. Yeah. I think we tend to put the onus on the other culture to teach us about them, as opposed to like actively wanting to learn about a different culture. And I imagine that, like that's tiring for someone to have to always explain. Like if we always have to explain ourselves to someone, sometimes I get tired of it and I just laugh it off, like we're not just about lumpia and pancit, like that's great, but But if you really want to learn about it, I think, especially for us at how to be allies is to actually proactively be always constantly be open to learning about things and not just expect it to be taught to us. Because clearly if you're expecting, various kinds of histories to be taught to us in schools or whatever, you're not going to get it. But so that's how I wanted to share that with you guys. That's how I'm sort of mentally understanding. Like I want to proactively know more and learn more. So yeah, I think it can get really tiring if we're always expecting another group of friends or folks to teach us about them without us actually engaging. So yeah. Anyway,
a lot of people will agree with you on that. Yeah.
So Alyssa, what I know you kind of frame your work under social justice. So can you talk about kind of your philosophy around that? How you feel that mental health is very much a social justice issue?
Yeah, this is a big one. My background is in sociology, and my graduate degree is in social work. And I worked for 10 years in community mental health. When people think about mental health and what impacts mental health, they think genetics, biology, family history, medical history, right? It's like, oh, did your dad have OCD? Because OCD can be passed on. Like, did your mom have anxiety? Because anxiety can be passed on, right? So, they think kind of like in those macro level terms, but there are also other things that affect mental health, and that's racism, prejudice, structural inequality, social inequality, classism. All of those things affect our mental health. And as minorities, right, especially if you grew up in predominantly white neighborhoods, that does create a sense of like inferiority and less than, and almost kind of like put your head down, just say yes, and don't cause trouble. Like, we're here in this country, just like, and so there's a lot of macro level stuff that goes on that affect mental health. Systemic issues, and that's why we have to fix the systemic issues to give people a fighting chance in terms of their emotional health. So
then how do you kind of democratize that? Because you also mentioned that mental health, like therapy and stuff like that, is very much privileged. So how do you democratize that in an industry that is very stratified?
I think our healthcare system has to be reformed to be able to give people access to mental health. Because if you don't have insurance, or if you don't have good insurance, a private pay mental therapy session can be anywhere upwards of $200 for 50 minutes, right? So you better hope your insurance is good. Here's the issue. There are millions of people in America who are uninsured. Yeah. The majority of those people are Black and brown folks. That's not a coincidence. The majority of Black and brown folks work minimum wage jobs that can't afford them insurance. So then they can't afford private insurance. So I do think we need insurance for everybody needs insurance. That's like a basic human right. We are the only country that is a first world country that does not offer insurance to all of its people. Yeah. So that's one way.
I would hope that I know that nursing is such a natural inclination for like a lot of Filipinos, but I would like to think that like you could be a helper, work in a helping profession that is not necessarily a nurse. Like if you are leaning towards like social work or therapy, I would love to see more Filipino American therapists. Only because I know in my journey when I was looking for a therapist many, many years ago, I had searched for Filipino Americans and they were few and far in between. And my cousin came up as one, and I'm like, I can't talk to you because you are my cousin. But I was just like, I was laughing because I always think like, I would love to talk to you, Ate, but I can't because like that's not legal. And then it made me wonder, like, if there's not enough Filipino American therapists, like, is there even enough therapists for people in this country? Because, like, if everybody in the country who did even have insurance attempted to access a therapist, would there even be enough folks to do that?
Yeah, there's not. our mental health system is not equipped to be able to take on the need. So I would love to see more Filipino Americans go into the mental health field. I really, really would, especially because, you know, I do get a lot of calls from Filipinos, Asians, and people of color, right? It's like they're just looking for a therapist of color, and my practice is full. There needs to be more of us. Mm-hmm. And it's cultural competency too, mm-hmm. right? Because if you're not of the culture and you're treating somebody of the culture, you can do a lot of damage. Mm-hmm. You could pathologize a lot of stuff that's normal to us, mm-hmm. but if it's not normal to like somebody else, they're going to make you feel like what's happening in your family is wrong. Mm. You know?
Yeah. Thank you so much. This conversation has covered a lot of things. I feel like this is a conversation we'll have in the future. Like, perhaps maybe we could revisit and check in with you again. I don't know. Yeah. But where can people find you on the internet? Obviously you said your practice is full, but like where can people find you on the internet to see your posts and whatnot?
My Instagram is Alyssa Marie Wellness. My website is www.alyssamariewellness.com. And yes, my practice is full, but if there are people who, you know, they've never been to therapy before, they need support in finding a therapist, people can feel free to email me, and then I could take out some time out of my day to guide them in looking for a therapist, and then helping them identify, you know, what good therapy looks like and what's a good fit for them. Because I do believe that in order for our people to heal, you know, we have to be able to help them get access to that care.
Thank you so much, Mike, Ryan, Joe. Do you have any final thoughts, comments?
Oh, thank you.
Questions?
Just thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
This is great.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
A great conversation. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe. And yeah, thank you very much.
Bye.
This Filipino American Life is produced by Michael Nailat. Our intro and outro music is by Roger Habon, aka 10.4 Raj. Resident reality checker Girly Colado, legal advisor Rianne Fajardo, and graphic design by Vincent Collyer.